Welcome back again to another protocol meeting. Don's going to be presenting today. We'll get to him in a minute, but first let's take a look at our norms there. Begin promptly as we are. So we're good there. We're going to stay on task until we're finished here. And again, be open-minded and welcome to all the viewpoints of the presenters and the other teachers in the room. And be willing to contribute constructive suggestions to help everybody out. And come with a positive attitude and a willingness to change. And you can see the protocol steps up there. We got the opening, which is what I'm doing right now. Don will be presenting. We'll have a focusing question, which I'll read to you. And then the clarifying questions is a chance for us to ask Don to clarify his lesson a little bit, maybe some things we thought of. We'll generate some ideas, present those to Don through a group discussion, and talk about those kind of openly. And then Don gets a chance to respond. And then he'll collect all of our ideas, and we'll kind of debrief and see how we did today.
All right. You guys have my project papers here. Let me explain to you a little how this lesson works. First of all, this is Auto Shop, and the kids have already covered at least 4 chapters of electronics. And this is the kind of the culmination of that, to let them actually do some hands-on with this and make something. And you have the project construction, and you also have another form that shows the schematic. If you know what that is, right there, yes.
Right here.
Let me see yours, Kara. Okay, this is a schematic form of all the components they're going to do. And what happens is each child gets a little kit. And we've gone over and discussed all the parts in this. And I have made the circuit board design for them, which is what these are. What I've done is Xeroxed it and shrunk it, and then we cut these out, and each student gets one of these. This is a larger one that they're going to use to kind of follow. And then each student receives one of these, which is copper clad. It's circuit board. And it's an insulating material on the backside, and it's covered with a thin shell, basically, of copper, which is a conductor. And at this point, they take this little picture that they have, and they tape it to the front of this, and they take a nail and make a dot where all the dots are, and that helps them kind of get some accuracy here. And then they have to paint this. We give them paint and a brush, and they paint this schematic in. These are the wires for the circuit board. So they paint this, and they've made the dots, and then this gets put in acid. And the acid eats away all the copper except where the paint is. And when they clear the paint off, they end up with a finished product. And so they look at the schematic, and they have to think backwards because the parts go in on this side and stick through on the other side. And then they have to honor polarity. The electricity only goes in one direction. Many of these parts are polarity sensitive and also heat sensitive. And then they're soldered in. And if they do this all correct, this is a siren. It sounds like a police siren. And so we attach a speaker. I don't have the speakers here, and they get a switch, and it runs off a 9-volt battery. And they're very, very excited to hear sound come out of this. It's a very cool thing. It really is a neat project because, and I have quite a few kids that go buy electronics project books, and they can begin making this stuff at home once they learn what these parts look like. And this helps them to identify parts. If they see them now, they really know what they are. They've soldered them, they've touched them. But I guess the hardest thing is some students just have a difficult time doing a neat enough job, keeping up. They miss too many days and they fall behind. You can't really, it's not something like I can say, take this home and do it. Because of all the equipment we have at school, the drill bits are very tiny and all the stuff that's involved. The soldering can be difficult for some students. They just don't get it. They've done a project prior to this where soldering didn't matter, but they got to practice it. So this is not a first event thing. This is kind of building up as they go along to do this. But that's basically the whole project in a nutshell, kind of there.
Perfect.
Yeah, would you?
Perfect timing.
Is it? Okay.
All right, well, this is Don's focusing question. before we start asking our clarifying questions. What strategy could I use in this unit to prevent gaps in understanding and catch up the kids who are having trouble with the content so that everyone builds a siren that works? So we're going to open it up for clarifying questions to Don from the group.
Is what they get, what we have, that's the handout they get?
They do get that, but I've gone over this on the board. I draw it and explain it. This really, they get this, but this is unimportant at this time. The really important piece to them when it comes to building is this picture of the schematic that lists all the components. And they're kind of, I've drawn them in, actually listed what they are, like if it's a transistor at 3905. And I've listed, like you see, they have emitter, base collector. There are 3 parts to this, and kind of shows where the legs have to come through on the circuit board. And then it's got all the schematic symbols, which is something I also want them to learn. It's got them all drawn in there and what they are. So they have to, when they get this packet full of parts, they have to determine what each part is in order to find its location in here to make this thing work. Now, quite commonly, you know, as in all your classes, you know, one kid will get it done and the others all want to copy it. Everybody wants to see what he did and just look at it rather than think on their own. That's just a huge problem, and I've found no way really around that.
How long is this project? Like how?
It goes about a week.
A week.
They've got quite a bit of time to do this. This is not an overnight thing. Because maybe they'll draw one day, the paint has to dry, I have to put it in the acid, they have to be polished and drilled, and there's only so many kids can use a piece of equipment at a time, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I also try to take students that complete become like TAs. You help this kid's way behind, show them what you can do.
Right.
And I try to focus them to work with the other kids to bring them up, which works very well, but there's still a group of kids that never really make it work or get it done.
Do you have any, do you use some examples, models? What kind of aids do you use for them to understand?
Well, I have models. They get to see really good ones and really bad ones. And we talk about the soldering, what it should look like. They get to see what good soldering looks like and bad soldering looks like.
And as far as the identifying of the parts, they're basically figured that out from the handout?
No, we've done several lessons on that, on how to read a transistor, what they are, show them. They have to learn the color code.
Okay.
I know that's beyond what we
Are
discussed
the
in the group.
examples hanging up during the week? Like, can they go out and look
No,
at a
during
good
the time we
example?
start this, the examples, I try to put them away.
Okay. So
Because they will just pick this up and copy it,
Sure,
and they
okay.
won't think at all or learn the content.
Okay.
They just want to copy something, which you can understand.
Yes.
And do you instruct them to just follow these steps in the project construction
Basically,
one at a time? Okay.
you know, it doesn't matter, really, it doesn't matter where you start. This is laid out for them, but it really doesn't matter where you start. They have to begin putting parts in. And before they solder, they have to show it to me, so that I can see that they've put all the parts in the right spot.
And if they don't finish in a week, can
If they don't
come in
finish it within a
after?
week, when we have Fridays to work, they can continue on it. I'll leave a soldering on out and they can work.
Okay.
But there is a point in time I cut it off because it's too difficult for me to keep getting dealing with it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go to the generating the ideas and suggestions for Don. We'll do that silently. Keep that in mind for the full 5 minutes and get as much
Could I have your
comments
notepad,
back to Don
please?
as we can.
What?
Notepad.
That's right.
To read what I wrote.
Must have touched drafting.
He's kind of
Okay, we're going to begin the next step, which is our group discussion. And if Don, if you could slide back from the table, it keeps us from wanting to talk to you because you're so easy to talk to. And remember not to speak directly to Don. And we'll just kind of open it up. Jimmy,
Thank
We're
you.
going to start with you because you're
Yeah.
always the last guy.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I am wondering if Mr. Cushing has got a how-to video on this, kind of present that first, because and we have a fine video production class. I'm wondering if they can kind of collaborate and show them, the kids, what exactly the steps, because I'll tell you, I look at this, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where it would go, why we do it, and I don't think I don't have the courage to do it, and then for him to get the kids to do it, I can see he could lose some, but if he had a presentation somewhat like that, I think maybe it could help.
I had that same thing down, and making something like a YouTube video. I know even us, when we get the instruction manual for something, it's like, no, I'll figure it out. But now you can pop on YouTube, and I'm always amazed what they have. Don came over the other day, and he couldn't get a piece off of a diesel truck, and he said he went on YouTube and it walked him through it, and he showed it to me, and I was amazed that someone actually took the time to do that. But my point is, I did this on my own time, where a student might feel embarrassed to go to the TV in the classroom and put it in there and it makes him look. He can go home if it was posted on YouTube or something similar, and he can go there during his own time and leisure and really understand it. Come back the next day ready to go.
Or you can post it on,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Don can post it on.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I had too on the posting deal is if he had a, looking at this, it's kind of hard to understand the schematic. I'm thinking if he did it in color, possibly do some color pictures like that, laminate them, and have them around the
Colored
classroom.
pens, like 4 colored pens.
Yeah, good idea, Mike.
It'll work.
I
But
was
they-
just hoping to have black and red things,
Yeah.
so I would get the polarity right. I would.
Yeah.
Well, and that would help too, yeah. But as he's doing it, if he's got a question, he can go up to the picture and go, oh yeah, it doesn't look like that.
Well, the other thing is I kind of got the idea from what Don said that all this worded, verbiage, whatever, that's on this page, really is kind of not needed. He's more concerned about the pictures, so why have it? Because I agree, like Jimmy said, I mean, I'm reading that and it's like, that's overwhelming. So if you don't have it, you're not setting the kid up with anxiety to begin with, because when you hand them a handout, because they don't want to listen to the teacher or whatever reason, they're going to probably read what's in front of them, and that just all of a sudden wells up anxiety and kind of shutdown mode. Like, I'm never going to be able to do it.
Well, to add to that, I think that because those parts are so small, number one, it might be a good idea to have a large version of each of those parts. So as, sounded like
like a
that's where the
diorama
gaps
even.
were, yeah. In the schematic.
Circuit
maybe
board.
a really large schematic on a poster.
Paint job on
With
down.
pictures of each of the parts on there, so that rather than go looking at their buddy, they can just look up at the wall and. Do they
Well, because
get
in the
that right?
focusing question, he's saying the problem is maybe people who are absent, while everyone worked on it, you were at home, and now when we come back, we're all this far now.
Which is
And
really.
how are you gonna catch up?
It's frustrating because he said this was a project, you're not doing this at the beginning of the year.
Right.
This is on down the line after we've already.
And so if you had it in the various stages, like
Yeah.
day 1, you should do this, and day 2, you should have this, and day 3, and day 4 or something.
Well, and the other advantage to having a checklist or anything on those lines, like what you guys are talking about, because I had that down too, is as a teacher, makes grading really easy, because you see that sheet of the checklist, they did, because you've already graded it as it went. So it's
Right.
just real quick and easy to give a final score on what they did or didn't do.
I don't know if it's possible to have the schematic drawn in like 3 different, or the template in 3 different versions. I mean, so that you achieve the same result, but it looks slightly
Yeah.
different, so that they couldn't just look at, maybe that wouldn't prevent or might encourage copying, because mine looks different from his, but he did his, so I'll just do his. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe yours has to match the one that you have. I don't know if it's possible to do,
Yeah.
different versions
Right.
to
Of the same
avoid
schematic.
the whole
Yeah.
copying issue.
I like that idea.
Like for tests,
Yeah.
And the other thing I was thinking is, what if you did it in pairs? Sort of like
Yeah,
a team.
But they wouldn't have their own little
Yeah.
toy.
They could
Yeah.
each, they could each
Have
have
their
their
own.
own.
Oh, I
It's
see what
just
you're
that they work on building it
Side by
together.
side.
Yeah.
separately. I mean, they separate,
And
but
they-
they,
Yeah, and they could check each other's parts before they bring it up.
yes, and I'm not one that likes generally team events, and I understand the purpose of them, because in the real world job, you're going to have to learn how to work with with people that you don't like, whatever the case may be.
Well,
And so in areas where you can, it just gets the students used to doing those type of things.
right. Speaking from the experience of having done circuit boards when I was in middle school, there was one teacher, and I remember like everybody just lining up, you know, and it seemed like
It's
a lot of time was
exciting.
wasted, you know, checking with the teacher. And so I think sometimes kids skip that step because they don't want to have to wait.
I see what you mean.
And if there's a poster for them to look at that has pictures, then that's gonna, you know, take away some of that.
Or if you hold back the next step until they turn it in.
I like how Don also uses his kids that get done early as TAs.
Yeah.
They
That
obviously
helps.
knew how to do it, and they can help
Yeah.
these other kids, and boy, that speeds up the process.
Yeah, 'cause
And then you don't have the long lines; they can actually check kids
They
off.
can.
You
Because
can
they
give kids authority to sign on.
well, kids love that too.
If he has,
Power of attorney.
the kids that finish or the TA, if they can get
Yeah,
the
yeah,
TA
if you
for
can get
those,
TA.
yeah.
And sometimes the student can explain it so
Oh,
differently
yeah.
than we can.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of had the same idea. Maybe have like a vocabulary assignment or test, or they have to test so high on some other, do so well on some other assignments before they get to start it or something. I know that's complicated, but
Yeah.
I don't know, something you have ahead of time that kind of establishes what that prior knowledge needs to be, and this is what you need to accomplish, or have a cheat sheet, make your own cheat sheet.
I was kind of thinking about kids that maybe have reading issues or language issues that can't read this. 'cause
Language
you know,
barrier?
yeah, you know, I mean, it's difficult. It's high-level stuff. What if they had to verbally explain to the teacher or to a TA or some kid that's already done that they know those steps, and then they get their little circuit board? So they have to say it out loud that they know what they have to do and in what order.
All right, Don, you're on. We're going to give you 5 minutes to respond to our great ideas and suggestions.
I really liked a lot of the things you said. I do show the steps. I know they don't have to follow this. This is way too tough for them. But there are a few kids that should see that this at this level. And the reason being, if they want to go on and do something on their own, they have to be able to do this if I'm not there. That's just the way it is. And many of the kids can rise to that occasion. So they follow me. Like when we do the board, everybody in class holds up their board and then they clean it. Then they all set it on and make the dots. We do it all at once. But it's that absenteeism, right? Kids gone or not showing up, and then they're behind, and the difficulty with that. I do have a larger poster that I do, and I score at the end, like Mr. Free said. It makes noise, but we're looking at also the quality of it. Some of them, when they paint it, I'll just say that's unacceptable, it won't work, and we wipe it off with lacquer thinner, and they start over. Kind of frustrating. Some of the kids, you can only do that to so many times. They've got to move ahead. I don't really want them to work in pairs. When they put it together, they almost always team up just automatically. They'll find a friend and they work together putting the parts together. But they have to make their own. If you don't put the parts, make the circuit board or solder it, it's that skill that they need to get. But yeah, I let them work in pairs or groups. They'll sit at a big table and everyone will say, this is how this part goes, and they'll work together. But it's hard, but I want to get them to think at least on their own. I like the idea of changing the schematic. Really, you're correct. I love the video idea too. Really, a video would be
Ideal.
No, it would be ideal, or even if I had slides like on a DVD and I could go through. I have a soldering section they go through that's slides, right? That shows good soldering, bad soldering, how to hold the iron, how to put the components in. So they get a lot of that. And they've gone over all these parts over and over and over. But just like with any lesson, there's that one group that just can't seem to complete. They're missing a couple of days a week and coming up. And it's complicated. It is difficult. But that's all I have. I love the comments, actually.
All right. Well, if we can send our comments down to Don. All right. Well, let's debrief how this went today, and I'm just a couple things I wanted to to throw out there, and maybe Vicki, you could put these in the parking lot. Is I as a facilitator, and I mentioned it before at a different meeting, that sometimes I hate to interrupt you guys because we got good stuff going on, and if there was a way, without, I was thinking someone could stand up, but sometimes that's distracting, to let them know they have about 30 seconds or a minute left, especially when the presenter's doing his lesson, and giving it to the group, that it's getting down to 5 minutes, and I can tell they got more to say. So
Right.
maybe we might want to.
Maybe a
Like
little
a-
timer.
Like a
Yeah,
30-second
timer,
warning
or
or
just
something.
just something that
Yeah.
someone that's across from the presenter will raise their hand,
I
and let
always
them
have
know.
more to say.
You got a minute left. Okay, 2 minutes left. Whatever. Yeah.
That's true. It could be that simple.
What did you, just
And-
a
A bell.
clock? on the-
just-
that you
That we could all
watch it?
see, or something on the wall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Big timer, yeah, that'd be
Of course, then you're
perfect.
doing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you just say 30 seconds.
I like
Yeah.
the egg
Yeah.
timer.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, when
We
you're
do that
giving
the
speeches,
rest
you
of
have
the-
somebody that goes, one
Yeah.
or,
Yeah. Or someone in the back room
You
will
know,
stand up to let the
something,
presenter know,
Debates.
and that's where I got
yeah,
that idea
you
from.
know,
But
wind it up.
and then the other idea is it worked out good this time, but I know in the past, sometimes presenting your lesson, because we are so diverse in this group, if we all taught algebra or English, it would be simple. We all know what Gareth, the Algebra 1 teacher, is doing, and we understand. But to describe this, or maybe what Gareth did at the other meeting, it takes more than 5 minutes to do that for the rest of the group to really understand what his lesson's all about, because we are so diverse in this group. And that may be something we want to look at in the future, is maybe adding a little more time on the presentation part if needed. If we don't need it, then great, but at least it's there so we all understand. And then sometimes at the end we have a lot of questions because we really didn't understand. It wasn't until he came back and explained.
Just because he kind of presented, and then I started to look through the documents, and then I had more clarifying questions.
Right.
When we're at the point of writing
Yeah.
our suggestions, I'm like,
Wait.
oh, I still have questions, and at that
Yeah.
point I was kind of stuck at it. Yeah, I'm saying for the sake of the protocol, it might be nice to have like a document reviewing time, because you gave your I didn't even get a chance to
Right.
look at that. That's what I'm saying. I had questions during the suggestion time.
Just to wrap this up, I wanted to comment because, me and Don teach similar subjects and similar kids actually, and so I look at something like this and I totally get what he's trying to accomplish here with the kids, and I understand the challenges and all. But it's neat in this group here, because we are so diverse, that we all still have great feedback on something that's so out of most of our areas as this project right here. And then also we kind of find out, he did it in middle school, and as we talk about different things, we find out that Julie's a hot rod fanatic and knows
Yeah.
about cars probably more than most people do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of neat in this group that, as diverse as we are, we have so many similarities, and we can still help anybody out
Yeah.
in making it better. It's
Yeah.
been kind of